Hey, what is up, everyone? Welcome to Market Psychology 101, where we look for value in the markets when there's fear and are cautious when there's greed. In today's video, we are going to be taking a look at the Bitcoin rainbow chart as well as other Bitcoin indicators and see where the price action is at, where it may be going. Let's start off with fear and greed. Now, this is important because not too long ago, we've been sitting in fear for a while. And last week during my videos, I talked about how the stock market started to possibly front run this move, that stocks were moving up. The stock market was in greed, and maybe it was just a matter of time until crypto turned around as well, and that it did. So crypto getting back up into the greed level, Bitcoin having a little bit of a pump. And as you can see here, we've been in this downtrend from greed into fear since really March, when Bitcoin made its top, its new all-time high at around 74K. We were in this uptrend. We were then in this downtrend, lower lows, lower highs. And I was wondering when I was seeing this, could we possibly start to see an uptrend? Now, this may just be a smaller part of lower highs. And unless we get above the greed level around 74, 75, then we can make a more clear indication of where this is going. But right now, we are possibly breaking to the upside for crypto. Something I may reference here and there in these videos, and that's just a Bitcoin dominance cycle, because we talk about this a bit. And for any of you guys who hold altcoins, basically the short of the long is that when Bitcoin dominance goes down, and I've shown you this in the charts many times, when Bitcoin dominance goes down, that overall tends to be good for alts, unless Bitcoin and everything's going down at the same time. Though I will say late 2017, early 2018, altcoins, they were going up even though Bitcoin was going down a little bit, because it peaked later in the year before many of the alts were doing their alt season 10, 20x. Speaking of alt season, kind of like fear and greed here. So this was during the 21 cycle, how we got 3 spikes in alt season. This was a true alt season here. Again, we'll take a look at Bitcoin dominance to show you what that means, or what that typically looks like. But just like fear and greed, I was saying, for this all season index, we've been making higher lows. And for right now, this may be the higher low that we're waiting for, and hoping that maybe it just goes sideways, but not break down. And it has started to go up again a little bit. So alt season indicator looking good as well. Going over to the Bitcoin rainbow chart, we have been down in the accumulate zone, the third zone here, the teal one, but we have worked our way back up into the still cheap zone. So some areas to look for to possibly see some price ranges. We do have Fed rate cuts coming middle of September. That tends to mean there are volatile times in the market. I have a chart here to show that. Well, that's another one, but basically this vertical line is around when rate cuts happen. And sometimes you can see here it shows a 10% dip in stocks. We already had that. We might go up into rate cuts and then back down a little bit and then continue higher or sideways and down. So my feeling is this is more to the line of what we'll see. If rate cuts are 25 basis points, if they're 50 basis points, then I'll believe this is more likely. But right now, I believe they're probably going to go low and so slow with rate cuts. That affects stocks, that affects crypto, everything. As far as if people with lots of money are going to be investing into risky assets like Bitcoin, it isn't behaving quite like digital gold yet. This cycle, it's still being treated as a risky tech asset. But after rate cuts, we could see, we could go up into rate cuts and then see another dip in either scenario. So back to the rainbow chart around that time, let's go out later, September. Let's say Bitcoin starts to go up to the 70,000 point as it does again, but then has a little dip. Then you can see in that green box, 60,000 would be an area we're looking for. If we have another big sell-off, possibly to the 100-week moving average, you see that 46, 47K mark in the accumulate zone. Let's go over to Bitcoin price action and see what all the good news is about. So One reason I throw on Heikin-Ashi candles as opposed to regular candles is you can see it cuts out the noise better. We see more of a trend with consecutive colored candles, whether red or green. Now, sometimes they're very short-lived. That does happen, but we had this doji weekly candle, and I said, doji means undecided, but it is green, and we are getting a buy signal, and we are going up. We're still in this downward channel, and a few weeks ago, Bitcoin did have that 30% move down from the upper end of the channel all the way down to the 786 fib line and the 50-week moving average, but it never closed underneath this channel, just wicked in there, so that was promising. If we zoom in on the daily, you can see we've broken above the daily moving averages that were resistance, and now they are support. So, it is possible Bitcoin, after having almost 10 straight green days in a row, it could come back down to the 62,300 level, even the 62,000 level. I wouldn't be worried unless it starts to close and break under that and possibly come back down to this trend line that we've marked here. So you guys know what I like to say about trend lines. They're only good for as long as they're good for. So it's possible it doesn't touch this again. But otherwise, my target in the short near term is 69,000. This gray line, that's Bitcoin's former all-time high. Let's throw on some other indicators, if we will, and let's do away with the buy-sell signal indicator, and let's throw on the RSI, because let's do the stochastic RSI and then the RSI. So the stochastic RSI, this is one way I myself, not financial advice for you, I dollar cost average in from my budget. I only invest as much as I'm willing to lose. I never over leverage myself. But anytime the stochastic blue gets above the orange down here, tends to be good value times the dollar cost average in. Now, it's done that before a couple times recently, and we still went down. So do know there's no silver bullet for any of these indicators. But overall, if you use that strategy, which I do, then overall you'd be good. So right now it is flipping above, and that is a positive sign for Bitcoin for as far as price action. So maybe you saw how it was staying at the lower end. Maybe now it starts to move towards the upper end. Let's look at the RSI. So we got underneath 50, and I noted how we really haven't been under there for a while, and on the weekly at least, Bitcoin hasn't been oversold since the bottom. So anytime it got under 50 has been the lows ever since this bull run started. So it is possible. There's still some great dollar cost average value. Another thing I was showing you guys is you see here how the RSI, that the dip goes up. You guys can clearly see that. It's lower here, okay? But then at this point, the dip of the strength goes higher, but the price went lower. That's what's known as bullish divergence. Excuse me, taking a sip of a smoothie. So higher in the RSI, lower in the price, bullish divergence. Now, right now we are lower in these peaks in the RSI, and the price action is still lower. So we got to wait and see what happens. Is this going to get back into the overbought area, or is it going to come down again? Because if it does and it starts to get towards the oversold area on the daily, that's where maybe we see Bitcoin come down to this 59, 60,000 level. But we'll see. Right now, I think because we've broken above those trend lines, I'm eyeing this trend line that we've seen since the beginning of this bull run that Bitcoin seems to be in love with. I'm eyeing this and maybe even a possible break towards new all-time highs. We'll see. Speaking of Bitcoin dominance, guys, this is still bullish. And something important to note, well, first off, you see how I have these trend lines that it honors this peak back here in 2020. Late 2020 before the alt season was here, and 2017, as well as this trend line that it ran into as well. I'm eyeing somewhere in this range as a possible peak for Bitcoin dominance, but these blue lines here, this 58% level, that is my base case for where dominance is needed to get to. So if it didn't get any higher, that would be fine. I'm willing to live with that. But if it does get higher, and typically when Bitcoin dominance goes higher, you guys remember what I showed you in that chart. When Bitcoin dominance goes higher, it is possible you see altcoins come down. So do know we're not out of the woods quite yet, and that is a possibility of Bitcoin dominance coming down or coming up somewhere in here. Now, the most important thing for you guys to know is that when Bitcoin dominance tanks to the low 40%, as it has before, it takes 1 to 2 months, at least it has at the end of the cycle. The last 2 times, doesn't mean this time has to be the same, but the last 2 times it did that. That's when many altcoins and Bitcoin miners exploded and did 10 or 20x's. So do keep an eye on that. Tether dominance. This one we have to take off log, and anytime we get to this trend line, Tether dominance shows us that the price of Bitcoin is topping in these areas. Again, if you're new to crypto, what this means is that 5.4% of all money in crypto is in Tether. And Tether is a stable coin. It has a value of $1, give or take a few cents as it fluctuates. So if times are volatile, people transfer their crypto to Tether so their holdings don't fluctuate. And the higher Tether goes, usually the more volatile times, so people hold on to their, what they say, are Satoshi values. Same with Bitcoin dominance. 57.5% of all money in crypto is in Bitcoin right now. And so when it's super risk on, towards the end of the cycle, that dominance tanks. So right now, Tether dominance, it's coming down, and that's fine. As long as we see a higher low, and you see here how I drew this Fibonacci retracement out, I am going to be eyeing this 236 level at 5.14% for a possible bounce. So unless we start getting towards this trend line here, I'm not going to say that's a top yet. Okay, let's go back over to the rainbow chart. So overall, I've seen a couple of camps out there as far as price targets for Bitcoin. I see people saying the top's going to be by the election. We're just going to take a look at some of these price targets. And by the way, here's how I'm looking for price targets, or at least a range. I don't try to predict too much, but I try to take the past data of the former cycles that we've had here and see, is there any bit of a trend to possibly give us a range? And something I've noted when I started this channel is how every halving, we've gone up one of these colored zones in this logarithmic regression rainbow chart. So logarithmic means by values of 10, and regression just means that it's no longer going up, but just out. And there's diminished returns. That's not a bearish statement. It just means, instead of making a 10,000x here, you might only be getting a 10x this time around. Anyways, we go up a color each halving, and I was wondering if that was going to happen, and it did. We were in the still cheap zone. So if you're holding on to Bitcoin now and waiting for the next halving, just take a look at the L box. I would say Bitcoin is going to be at 200,000 at the next halving. Think about that for a minute. This yellow box, if we continue that trend, says Bitcoin be at 200,000. Now, I will say, last time the rainbow chart was invalidated in the last cycle. Sometimes this, here we go. Sometimes this does show it. So they had to make another colored band. This rainbow chart was invalidated this last cycle as we went down lower. So do keep that in mind, that because this chart exists does not mean that price has to honor it. Okay, so let's get that out of the way. But then from the highs, at least here from, we can go back here to 2013. We were above the rainbow chart, above max bubble territory. 2017, we were in max bubble territory. See the pattern emerging again? 2021, April, we were in this reddish orange bubble territory. Later 21, when Bitcoin made its actual all-time high at around 69,000, it did peak up into here, but it's mostly in this orange box. So my conservative case for Bitcoin is that it's going to be somewhere in this area, maybe the upper end of this, depending on when it tops. If we top earlier, I'm going to be looking for targets more in this range. If we have another 4-year cycle, as we've had before, you see that November 21, December 2017, December 2013, again, around 4 years, then I'm going to be eyeing up here. So here's the narratives I've been reading out there, and you guys have to make your own plan, your own decisions, but people are saying, well, the top's going to be around the election. Okay, remember what I said, that yellow box, if we have an early top, I'd be looking at some of those lower prices. So the yellow box, that would be 82 to 110,000. I can see that, and I'm going to go back to the chart and show you why. Some people are saying, well, we're going to top next year by March. Okay, that yellow box, 90 to 120. And I think we can start to throw in that light orange box, 120 to 150. So 90 to 150, that range. Okay, let's say we have another 4-year cycle. Now, by the way, before we get to the 4-year cycle, Mark, on my Bitcoin chart, let's go over to that. I'm going to show you guys something. Is that I averaged out how many days it takes from a new all-time high to the next peak, and the average was 300 days. And the reason I did it is because we had a new all-time high for the first time before the halving. Usually it's come after. And the average days from new all-time high to the next peak would place us later this year. However, the average from each halving to the next peak, you see that's 484 days. That places us in August. So the reason I put that up there is, again, I don't have to be married to any predictions. So many people on Twitter, on YouTube, X, they all say these predictions, and then they look like idiots when it doesn't happen. Guys, no one knows. What we have to do, though, what's most important, in my opinion, not financial advice for you, is have a plan. Okay, that's why I have a dollar cost averaging plan, and I stick to it. And when the price action meets the thresholds of my plan, then I go in. So I don't care when the top is, because part of my plan is when I see the top get in these areas or other signals, other markers pop up, then I'm going to get out regardless. So I'm just looking at this as a range. Anyways, let's go back to the rainbow chart. So let's say I think we're going to talk about March, right? Some people are talking about March. Oh, we talked about that. 90 to 150K. Let's go over to August, okay? The area I talked about, the average from the halving. I think we can look at those two orange boxes, the light orange and the orange, 136 to 224K. Whoa. And then if we go to November, another 4-year cycle, again, two orange boxes, 150 to possibly 244K. Now, here is why I think that range is important, and that's because if we take our Fibonacci retracement, again, that's this tool right here. You draw from the high to the low. If you take it off log, you're going to see that the 1618 macro fib is at 100,000. So again, if we top around the election later this year, that's within our range at the 1618. Another important thing to know about the 1618, it's kind of funny how, you see how the 1618 runs into that average from, 300 days from a new all-time high to peak, okay? So does that Bitcoin trend line that I've been showing you guys. And so does the trend line from the former Bitcoin peaks. It all converges around this 1618 area. So I'm really curious to see where Bitcoin's going to be at the end of this year. Is it going to be around here? And if so, is it going to continue higher? Or is that going to be the top like some people are talking about? I don't know. And then next, you can see the 2618 is at around 155K, and the 3618 is at 208. Now, we did talk about the 4236 level just briefly. You can see here that if we go to the 4-year cycle, sorry, I have my Amazon lady talking to me. You go to the 4-year cycle, you see that orange box goes up to that number of around 241K. So in the most bullish scenario, that 4236 is at the upper end of that box at 241K. Do I think we're going to get there? Full disclosure, my gut says no. What I believe is that, as far as what I've been seeing, and of course I could be wrong, is that if we have something like a 4-year cycle or top in August, we'll be somewhere between the 2618, 3618, 155 to 210. We'll just make nice even numbers. Now again, let's say we get 50 basis point cuts and the Fed's cutting quick. I think that would change my opinion as far as a later top to an earlier top. And then that 100K would come more in line. And the reason I say that is when the Fed cuts by 50 basis points, we tend to top sooner than later. But if they only cut by 25 basis points, and I'm kind of eyeing scenarios like 2019 or 1998, albeit we're battling inflation, so that'll make things tricky this time for the Fed as well. But if they're only cutting by 25 basis points, I think it gives us more room for the crypto market to run. So that's what I'm looking at there. Anyways, guys, let me know what you think in the comments below. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a fantastic Monday and a wonderful week. Take care. Thanks for watching.